now. It'll just confuse you less. Okay, sharing my screen for clarity on things that I'm going to talk about. So the most important thing that we're discussing today, in fact, the only thing that I'm going to focus on today predominantly is framing in debates. What is framing, first of all, and how that's done, right? So as for framing, so any debate that happens, it requires a setup based on which that debate happens, which means that there are two teams and both of them are coming with different understanding of how this debate might operate. If you want to be on the same page in terms of your fundamental, broad, basic understanding of what this motion is about and what this needs us to do, you need to agree on several things, right? Like the thing that we're talking about is a thing that we have like a shared understanding of, which means that I can't think of developing countries as India while somebody else is talking about developing countries as Philippines and then debate. You could either talk about it in terms of like both the teams saying that India and Philippines both are considered developing countries, so let's just consider them both while we make their arguments. Or you could say that look, India is a developing country and this is more relevant to this debate than Philippines for so and so reason, which is why you should listen to the side which is proposing India to be the context and not Philippines. So what I'm trying to say is that when a debate happens, there's a lot of clarifications that need to be made before you start with your argumentation as such, which is what is framing. So all the setting up that happens, and I will tell you what the components of this setup are. They are at large, overarchingly, and like collectively called framing. Okay. Now, so one thing that you know now is that framing is used to set the debate up. But then how do you set it up and what are the components? First of all, there's something called characterization, which is just like a fancy term for saying that you are supposed to define the terms in the motion when you get a motion. For example, for today's session, in particular, I will be dealing with a motion, and let me just show that to you. Give me 1 second. A couple of people in the waiting room. Just a sec. Okay, yeah. So if you look at this motion, it says, don't read anything else like this is surrounded by right now, but just like read the motion. This house as God would end the human population now. So if this is a motion, and this is a pretty simple motion because there's nothing that you do not understand at the face value in this motion, right? You know what, I mean, the concept of God, you know, human population. Even if we think that the motion is very simple and everybody understands every term in the motion, as in the dictionary definition of these terms is clear to us, we still need to go ahead and define the terms according to what we think they are. This does not mean that you are supposed to tell me what these, I mean, the dictionary definition of these things, right? You can't say that, oh, God is this supernal being who we cannot see but we believe in, because that's something I already know. And you can't say that human population refers to people of this country only or that country only. Mute yourselves, everybody, please. Yeah. So when you're talking about extremely annoying, okay, Sanvi, mute yourself. Cool. So when you're talking about a particular motion, no matter how simple you think the terms in there are, you still need to define it. How do you define it? Not according to the dictionary definition, but according to how you want people to perceive this particular term, right? How do I decide how I want these people to perceive the term? According to what will benefit my case. I'll just come to that in a while, right? But then that is basically characterization where you define the terms in the motion. So if I was debating on this motion, I would say, panel, in this motion, we think God means so and so, the human population means so and so, and this is how they're interrelated, God and humans, perhaps, that I would say. So that will be a part of your characterization, the most basic understanding of it. Okay. Then the second component of framing is status quo. What is status quo? It's just, okay, a lot of you aren't on camera, so try doing that. I'm just sharing my screen, which is why I'm not sharing, like, I'm not on my camera because I don't want the internet to falter. But everybody else on camera, please. Yeah. So status quo is just basically your understanding of where this debate is happening. The emphasis is on where here, okay? So your characterization where you define the terms is basically your what. So what is this debate about? This debate is about God. So I define God. And this debate is about human population. I define human population. And then this debate is about God's relation to human population and what God wants to do to the human population. So that also becomes a part of your what, which is the characterization. So you define the terms in the motion and you interlink them, or tell me what the linkage between those terms is within the characterization. All right. Moving on, there's status quo. Status quo is also like associated with characterization. None of this is very different from each other. It's just overlap sometimes, so it's okay. But then first understand the components, and then I'll tell you how integration happens. In status quo, you just try to define where is this debate happening and what does the world in which this debate is happening look like, right? So if I'm saying that this house as God would end the human population now, I'm going to say that this is happening in the society that exists right now at the moment as it is, which means I'm not referring to perhaps the Stone Age. I'm not referring to the medieval times. I'm referring to the postmodern society where scientific endeavors have reached uh, heights, and then they also like have a couple of inventions. I mean, that's a different story. Whatever you want to define in the postmodern society, whatever components you want to pick from the postmodern society is your call, right? I could say there's a lot of scientific vigor now in the society, or I could say that there is not enough concern in the in human sensibilities towards the environment. That is what describes postmodern society. So I will just look for ways of finding a context for this motion. How do you find a context for the motion? You see if this debate fits the current scenario. And if it does, then why do you think it fits the current scenario? So, like if I'm saying this debate is relevant to the times that we're living in right now, I also have to say that it is relevant because now it's high time that humans paid for their mistakes, right? And paid for their folly in just contaminating the environment to the extent they could, or pursuing heedless development, be it economic or otherwise, at the cost of other human beings who are more vulnerable, or at the cost of other living organisms who are not as well equipped as humans are, cognitively and otherwise. Which is why we think that humans now need to be taught a lesson, or that they are not redeemable anymore. They will not learn from their mistakes. That's something that they have proven, which is why God has to kill them. So now I have said that, look, this debate can operate in the modern society only because the modern society marks the degeneration of humans, or marks the marks the unredeemable way of human life, right? This is to say that before, humans were okay, right? They were trying to find a way to get through life, to just develop so that they could have a comfortable living for as long as they were on the planet. But now they have become over ambitious. Now they are marked by a lot of vices, and that has particularly reached a crescendo in the postmodern society, which is why this is where the debate should happen ideally. I hope you understand through this example what setting up the debate in a context means. It's not always you going ahead and saying that this debate is happening in Peru or Chile or America, not that. You're supposed to say that this debate is happening in a society and these are the components of this society. This society could be anything. It could be a country, but it could also be like a subjective, not subjective, but like, yeah, subjective interpretation of the things that are happening in this society where your debate takes place. It could also be, mind you, a hypothetical society, because you can also get motions which are hypothetical. You could get motions such as something that on something that might happen in the future but hasn't happened so far. So for that, in that case, you will also have to imagine a society, say like 20 years down the line, how would the human society look? Those kinds of things, to just give it a context. So that's what context basically means. Any questions so far? Because this, I think, might be a little overwhelming for people who are not familiar with the concept. Just raise your hands if you have any questions by any chance. Surya, yes.
Yes. So the first speaker, should they like explicitly mention like this is our characterization, this is our status quo, this is our stakeholders, or should it just like naturally come in the flow of the speech?
Okay, so both of those things are doable. I'm not here to prescribe a structure to your speech because that's very unique and personal to everybody. But definitely, if you're a new debater, if you think your characterization will get lost in the speech if you were to integrate it, please explicitly and categorically mention it at the outset. That's advisable for novice debaters. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions? Harini?
So I wanted to ask, like you said, characterization next status quo, right? So can we go in that order if you're new to the debate?
Yeah. See, there's no order as such. I'll tell you how all of these things are interlinked. So it doesn't really matter if you put status quo before characterization or stakeholders before characterization. Order just doesn't matter here. Order does matter to the extent that this characterization, status quo, and stakeholder analysis cannot come in the whip speech. That'd be too late. Or the deputy speech. It has to come in the first speech. But how it comes in the first speech is not something that I am going to be very finicky about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other question? Seeing none, moving on. Okay. Now on, okay, again, people in the waiting room, give me 1 second. Yeah. So about the stakeholder analysis then, the stakeholders are basically people who are impacted by what you're saying in the debate, right? Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, so stakeholders aren't always mentioned in the motion. That's one thing that you want to keep in mind. It's not that the motion will always specify the stakeholders. For example, you might think that this motion does specify stakeholders, such as God, because God is doing something to, so it's obvious that they are being, they are a part of this debate. And there are certain impacts that that this debate is going to have on them, whatever God might mean in this debate, right? And human population is another stakeholder in its entirety. So there's a couple of things you want to remember about stakeholders. One, that stakeholders aren't always mentioned in every motion. Sometimes you just have to find them by yourself. This motion is not the kind where stakeholder is not mentioned, but there are motions where there is no mention of a stakeholder. You still have to go ahead and find them. How do you find them? For example, if there is a motion on politics, and let's say, if there was a motion on China, let's say, right, international relations. So of course, China's political authorities are not mentioned there. But if you want to mention them and make them stakeholders, you can. You should, in fact. If you're talking about the Chinese political, Chinese polity, you have to by default talk about the kind of political authority there is, right, or the form of governance there is, or the people of China. Even though people of China aren't mentioned in the motion, you still identify them as stakeholders. So stakeholder identification is paramount. It cannot be bypassed just because you don't see a stakeholder explicitly mentioned in a motion. But secondly, the stakeholder you don't have to have always fixed stakeholders, which means that the more number of stakeholders you can, so the number of stakeholders you can find also determines the kind of arguments that you're going to give eventually. Because if I have, let's say, a stakeholder which is like the Chinese population, my argument is going to be very different from somebody else's case where they are not using Chinese population as a stakeholder. They're talking about somebody else, let's say the Chinese authorities, or they're talking about the United States of America as a stakeholder in a debate on China, because USA is directly in conflict with USA and vying for power with China. So that's that, right? So stakeholder is basically the identification is on you. Sometimes it might be mentioned, sometimes it might not be mentioned. But secondly, it has to be particularly and categorically mentioned in the debate. It's not like you will presume that there are some stakeholders who are relevant to the debate and run the debate according to that. This is not like an implicit, unsaid understanding of things. Here you have to say that, look, these are the stakeholders we identify before you start talking about them. So you can't just start talking about Chinese population and how they need to have a better life, they need to have more exposure, without telling me why the Chinese population is important to this in this debate at all. Because there might be the other side who might be saying that, look, it's not the people in China, but perhaps the people of America who matter more in this debate. So if you want to make a case about the people of China, then you have to tell me why the people of China are more important in this debate when compared to the people of United States of America or some such thing, right? That's your stakeholder analysis. But when I say stakeholder analysis, again, I don't mean dictionary definition. That's another thing that you want to keep in mind. So whenever, I see a lot of people making this mistake, and this is like an absolute rookie error, where you just think, okay, so if you get a stakeholder, let's say politicians, how people choose to define it is by telling me that politicians are the political authorities or people who are who look after the administrative responsibility of a country or some such thing. Now that's a problematic characterization, not because it might be factually incorrect or incomplete, but also because everybody knows that bit about politicians, right? That's a basic understanding that everybody has, given that all of us know the language. What you want to tell me then is something new about this stakeholder that I might not be paying attention to right now as an adjudicator, right? So what is it about politicians that might not be running in my mind, but you need me to remember that, because only then will your case make sense. So for example, okay, politicians are people who look after administration, be it in a local area or at national level. That's okay. But then you maybe want to remind me that look, politicians are mostly in some country, like in developing countries, let's say, corrupt. Maybe you could say that, or they work on self-interest, or that they're power hungry. Now, these are not connotations that are perpetually there in my mind, which is why you want to remind me through your stakeholder analysis that these are some connotations that you need to keep in mind when you're listening to a debate, because this is what our case is based on. This is what stakeholder analysis means in very simple words. Whenever you have a stakeholder or a person to mention in the debate and talk about, you first tell me what are their interests, what are their motivations, right? What is the motivation to just keep going in life? Which means that all of us, and I mean, you could pick any random person in this particular meeting, we operate given a set of incentives. For example, I come to this class because maybe I like discussing debate motions, and I like the practice of debating in and of itself, and I would love everybody to just enjoy it as much as I do. That could be my incentive structure. But you guys come to this session because you want to perhaps do well at TNDC, but then you also want to learn about debates, and you want to network with people who are like you, your peers, and they also do similar things as you do, like debates, right? Now, another incentive, this is your incentive structure, which motivates you to come to this session, and this is a separate incentive structure, right? Now you could have another incentive structure on top of this. Let's say when you go play football, or if you watched the finals yesterday, I mean, for that you had a separate incentive structure. Maybe you think Messi playing is very aspirational, right? Or you think, or you do it for immediate gratification, or you like collective community, community watching or some such thing, right? Which means that a lot of people have 1,000 different reasons for every single thing they do in life, which is what I mean when I say the incentive structure or the inspiration of a person, right? Why is that important in debates? Only when I identify that what the interest of a stakeholder is, will I be able to gauge how they are likely to respond to what I'm saying. For example, in this motion, I said this house as God would end the human population now. For me to be able to operate in this debate and like do certain and make certain arguments, I have to first gather how God would respond to such a resolution, or why God would want to do it, right? For which I need God's incentive structures, whatever they might be. Maybe I can say God is always a benevolent actor. So God wants to do good things to people. Secondly, God cannot displease any of the stakeholders, because all the stakeholders are eventually God's creation. So God does not function by the principles of revenge or vengeance, which is why God cannot be ill-meaning. This is to say that God, if God has to end human population, it has to be for a good reason. It cannot be for
Excuse me?
not right now. Just give me 2 seconds.
Yeah, sure.
It cannot be for a reason such as I want to seek vengeance from people who polluted earth for so long. That's not how God can think, simply because God's incentive structures do not permit that, right? And the kind of persona that God is in this particular debate and otherwise, in our perception, it conflicts with this kind of like ill-meaning intent of seeking vengeance on people, which is God's own creation. So all of those things have to be kept in mind. Only then will you be able to come to cogent arguments. Otherwise, you will start making arguments that do not sit well with your stakeholder, because you didn't understand your stakeholder at all. You have to first get into inside the head of a stakeholder that you're debating on behalf of, debating against, or debating for. Get it? So that's important. I'll take questions now, but raise your hands and please don't just unmute yourself and disturb ever. That's Netra.
Is framing done only by the proposition or also by op?
Framing is done by both the sides. I'll tell you how that engagement happens in a while. Just like I'll tell you. Ritvik?
So you talked about the stakeholders. Is in every topic that is being given to us, will there always be a stakeholder?
Always, yes.
And also, what happens when when a person gives a false statement, and you know that it's a false statement? Will you try to point it out, or what is the right procedure to do it?
So basically, the question is again about how does opposition counter proposition framing, right?
Yeah.
I'll just come to that. Okay, I think this is a recurrent question, so let's deal with it first. Everybody can lower their hands. All right. Now that you've understood that proposition first speaker is supposed to do all of this, like give us proper framing, which includes three components, which I have explained in detail. What does opposition first speaker do? Once the proposition first speaker, they've defined all that they had to in terms of who the actors are, who the what the terms in the motion mean, and where this debate is happening. The leader of opposition can either choose to agree with what the government side is saying, or they can disagree and give their counter characterization. This is to say that framing is mostly not where the two sides are conflicting on, right? This is not your moot point, or this is not your contention. The framing is just for you to be on the same page, like I said initially when I was starting this session, for you to be on the same page and thereby pursue a debate. We cannot be thinking, so if the debate is on fruits, you can't be thinking of apples and I can't be thinking of oranges if we are to debate fruitfully as in this particular round, right? Which is why you need framing, so that both of us can either agree on the definition of fruits being both apple and oranges, or only apple because apples are more relevant to the debate, or oranges because oranges are more relevant to the debate. So this is what framing is about. Framing is never about just never agreeing to what the other side is saying, because you can. It is okay and in fact favorable if you can just immediately click with what the other side is saying and say that yes, framing is right, this is what we were thinking as well, let's just get on to the argumentation now. So opposition can either agree, they can say that yes, their understanding of God is okay, we think we buy into that, and we also think that their understanding of human population is non-restrictive, so we will also take that up for the debate. And now every time we say human population, both of the sides mean exactly the same thing, which has already been agreed on, right? That's what framing is for then. If you want to agree, you just say we agree with it and then move on to the argumentation bit of things. Sometimes the government might have mentioned something in the framing which you agree with, but then you want to add a layer to it because then perhaps their framing was not sufficient, or it was inadequate in your context or in for your case time. So you can add that layer by yourself. So you can say that panel, look, we agree with whatever the government side is saying, but then we think we have a couple of additions to make. Once that's done, we agree to what they're saying, but then you also have to buy into what we are saying on top of it. That works all as well, right? So that's what the opposition first speaker does, besides of course rebutting the PM, because every time you have a speech that is preceded by somebody else's, like someone else's speech, you have to rebut that speech. That goes like that happens by default without saying. So like prime minister does not have a speech to rebut because they're opening the debate, which is okay. Prime minister can just do the framing and give the major 3 or 4 arguments that the deputy can then analyze later. But the leader of opposition, because you already have a speech preceding yours, you have to rebut what PM is saying as well. And you have to build your case after having rebutted the PM. Because there's no point of sidelining what the PM said and pursuing what you discussed in case prep, regardless of like the PM's claims, right? So that shouldn't happen. Now, I saw there were some hands raised. I'll take questions. Arena?
Yes. So for the Prime Minister's speech, is it better to mention some preemptives in the speech?
Sure, yes. Yeah, if you can.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Netra.
Okay, for example, if the proposition frames humans as evil because they wanted to support their case, which is to end the human population, can the oppositions like frame it differently when framing stakeholders?
Yes, you could. Yeah. But then, okay, for stakeholders, it's a little different. I'll just get to that. Surya?
Yes. Could the opposition like agree with some parts of the proposition's arguments and then disagree with few others? Like,
Yeah.
is it possible?
Yeah, partial agreement is possible. You have to categorically mention what you don't agree with and why then.
Okay.
Okay. Another hand raised? No. Okay, Surya, you can lower your hand. So about stakeholders then, if government side mentions a couple of stakeholders, but they're not dealing with the stakeholders that you had in mind when you were prepping from your side, you can just say that these are the stakeholders relevant to the government, but we have a different set of stakeholders who also need to be considered. The problem here is that this does not mean that you will not deal with government stakeholders. If government has some stakeholders at which who they're talking about, you also have to talk about them and say that, look, they are also better off on our side of the house. See, a good case line is one that entails a lot of stakeholders and seeks to benefit them. Benefit as in ensure that there is no obviously antagonized stakeholder. because whenever there is a problematic stakeholder, there will be a retaliation from the stakeholder. If you displease a stakeholder, they're likely to come back with a similar like a retaliatory sense, right? And this will create chaos in your paradigm. You don't want that to happen, which is why you will try to please as many stakeholders as possible. I'm not saying please all the stakeholders, because pleasing all the stakeholders can oftentimes be problematic, since there are a lot of stakeholders who don't want the society to progress. They're regressive in nature and they can never be helped. It's okay for you to not care about them. It's okay for you to not care about super rich stakeholders, because they will always fend for themselves no matter what. Now, in most of the debates, and I'm not saying, I mean, don't misunderstand this as me saying that this stakeholder always wins the debate. But in most of the debates, minority stakeholders are the best to identify, because when you identify minority problems, you are able to solve the most pressing issues, mostly, of the society. Because when you talk about super rich people, when you say, oh, Ambani will suffer, or some industrialist like Elon Musk will suffer, or like, let's say, Jeff Bezos will suffer, it is a little difficult for me to buy into, right? Because whatever their problem is, this problem is definitely more magnified when you consider it the same problem for a person who comes from, like, let's say, below poverty line, or like low income household. So always, whenever you're finding a problem, don't say that, oh, a politician will suffer, or like a privileged person will suffer, because their suffering is always less, even though it might be there, but it's always still less than and mitigated when compared to that of a person who doesn't have any means whatsoever, right? So like, if Elon Musk will be in like if he faces the music because there is like environmental degradation happening in the Western countries, or wherever he's living, let's say in America, he's still better off as compared to people who don't have the means to just like relocate from America, right? Or let's not even talk about Elon Musk. Let's talk about Ambani. Ambani today, or like Adani, or whoever you think is super rich in India, they always have the option of relocating to another country if India has some obvious, evident problem because of which it is not being able to sustain its populace, right? But then the people who are the most vulnerable in the country are likely to be in, like, to put themselves in a way more perilous situation without there having been any fault of their own, right? Which is why the vulnerable actors are always better to defend. Don't end up making a case for the already privileged people, because they are mostly not a part of the debate, because they can fend for themselves. So even in the worst case scenario, they are still able to extricate themselves and make their lives at least livable and sufferable. So that, which is why, I mean, you don't minorities are often like chosen as stakeholders. Now this could be poor people, this could be cultural minorities, this could be a group of people who's been which has been marginalized for a very long period of time. So like women, or perhaps children who are vulnerable, or old people because they're also vulnerable, right? Or people who have been discriminated against on the basis of caste, creed, sex, all of those things. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, none. Moving on. Now, there's a couple of things that you need to understand about framing. So this is very basic understanding of what framing is you're supposed to do in framing. But I know there's obvious problems that transpire when you actually try to do it by yourself. So in theory, it sounds easy, which is why I'm trying to just simplify things for you by already telling you where you're likely to go wrong so that you can avoid it in the future. First thing is that whenever you define the terms in a motion, remember that they should be value neutral. And they don't confuse this with the second point, because they sound very like adversarial to each other, but they are not. I'll tell you how this happens. When I'm saying value neutral, I mean, if I'm defining human population, I shouldn't just define human population just because I know that I have to, as government side, justify the end of human population. Don't just say all bad things about human population, right? That human population just can't be redeemed, that it's destroyed the environment, that their scientific endeavors are actually humanizing machines, which we think is problematic because it's almost like the birth of a new species, which will take it over humans, etc., etc. This is tainting human civilization to the largest extent. Now, while this might be helpful for your case, you also have to keep in mind that if you take it to an extreme where it's absolutely impossible for opposition to debate at all, because if people are so bad, then they should be killed, of course, then you want to perhaps start like conceding into like some of the good things about human population as well. This is to say that you don't always want to fixate on the bad just because you think the bad will help you win the debate, because all, even if it would, there is also a good side. If you're trying to like avoid that good side altogether, don't forget that even avoiding that wouldn't lead to the opposition not mentioning that you are doing this unnecessary, not unnecessary, unfair avoid. There is some unfair avoidance tactics that you're deploying, which means if you choose not to do a value neutral assessment of this term, then the opposition will call you out on that. So it's better for you to already say that panel, we know there are good things and bad things about human civilization or human population, and we think still the bad out weigh the good in humans now, which is why it's time that the human population ended. That's one way of saying things, rather than saying that no, human population is absolutely bad, they can't be helped, they've never been good, because that's untrue. That's not what humans actually stand for. So the advice here on like how it should be value neutral is that you think of it from all dimensions and then try to say that the dimension that you are focusing on is better than the is more legitimate than the other dimensions, rather than saying that there is no other dimension, that this is a unidimensional problem where humans are absolutely corrupt. No, that will be called out. Does that one make sense? Just give me a thumbs up or ask me a question if you have any. Okay. I hope everybody is listening because there's not a lot of thumbs up. Cool. Priyanka, is there a question?
No, I had raised my hand to show that I've.
Okay, perfect. All right. Sure. Okay, moving on. Now, this is the first thing about your framing and what it should look like. But leading, second component, the second feature that you want to, like the second feature based on which you want to characterize the terms is that it should always be leading. So leading is to say that if I want, I'll give you a very basic example, right? If I want two people to fight with each other, let's just put it like that. I will, okay, let's say person A and person B. If I want both of them to fight, I am going to tell person A that, look, person B is really talking they're not talking well about you, or they're just spreading rumors about you. So this, that, right? While when I go to person B, I'm going to say the same thing about person A. Although even if person A says something good about person B and vice versa, I'm not going to tell them that, because that will reduce the likelihood of them fighting, but I want them to fight. So I'm only going to tell them about things that will actually get them to fight. This is kind of the role that you play in debates as well here. When I say leading characterization, you also do the same, right? You want the adjudicators to believe that it's nice for the human population to end now. It's time that the human population ended, which is why you want to focus now on things that will justify this particular move. And that is how you choose to define human population then as well, right? So if I think that saying that human population is actually giving the agency that they have and putting it in the hands of like in the lap of science, then that's obvious that like artificial intelligence will take control and this society will be unmanageable, which is why it's better that it ended now, or that natural catastrophe, like catastrophic events are already going to just we are on the precipice of those catastrophic events, and this will anyway end human civilization. So it's better if God generously did that rather than people dying of like abjectly dying of, let's say, starvation or some other problem that is created by natural disasters. So I have to say things that will make the adjudicators think that ending the human population is really the need of the hour now, given that human population is so problematic. But how do the adjudicators understand that the human population is problematic? By me explaining what human population is about, what are the major hallmark traits, why is, I mean, those kinds of explanation, right? Which is why I'm saying here that this is not dictionary definition that I'm talking about. Every time I tell you to define the terms in the motion, I mean to say you find out the dimension that will help you build your case. So problematizing human population is helping me, which is why I want to use that problematized aspect rather than saying that human population has also been good historically. Although they have been that, I don't want to focus on it a lot, right? Does that make sense? I mean, value neutral and leading, both of these things are not conflicted in your head, right? It's okay. Arena?
Yeah, so it does sound kind of conflicting in my head. So could you just explain what should we do exactly? Like maybe just mention value neutral and just explain what we're leading.
Yeah, so when you're saying value neutral, so me saying value neutral stuff is saying that human population does not just mean human population of a particular country panel, because nowhere in the motion has it been mentioned this is only about ending the bad people in the world, or ending like the extremely problematic characters in the world, or people who were anyway going to die in a day or two, or like who have chronic illness, right? When this is not mentioned in the motion, I cannot take that leverage of saying that look, this is only God ending those people who are either suffering a lot already, or who are all old or are going to die, or some such thing. I have to consider human population in its entirety, because the motion does not allow me to restrict my stakeholders and make life easier for me by saying that God will only kill people who are going to die anyway. Because then opposition is not left with the case to deal with, right? If you're going to kill people who are going to die anyway, what can the opposition say to that? You can't be so uncharitable, and you can't define terms like that, which is what I mean by value neutral. You have to also consider what opposition can actually debate on, and not restrict your case to an extent where there is no debate in the first place, right? That's value neutral for you. But secondly, when it has to be leading, although I focus on all the dimensions of human population, saying that human population is being talked of in its entirety, and we are not cutting corners by saying that look, it's us focusing on a particular country as opposed to some other. I am here leading, I'm still leading in my explanation, because I am focusing more on the dimensions that I want to focus on. So human population can be considered in its entirety, but we are still saying that humans are problematic in its, I mean, this entire species is problematic in its entirety, right? Because all of us have this shared trait of, let's say, self-interest, right? An American, an Indian, a person from Latin America, all of us function on the basis of self-interest. That's like a paramount trait in all of us that makes us unworthy of having anything such as nature, environment, because we don't care for it. Now, what am I doing? I am not cutting corners by restricting the scope of the debate, which is what value neutral means, but I'm also leading, saying that even if we are considering all of human population, it's problematic in its entirety. Does that make sense, Arina?
Yeah, it does, but I have one follow up. So you're saying not to mention the good traits of human beings because that's not leading to your side of the house?
You have to mention them, but then you
So
also
just
have to find a way of saying that these good traits are not, they are, I mean, the bad traits outweigh the good ones.
okay. Okay, thank
That's the
you.
leading bit of things, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Any other question? Seeing none, moving on. All right. So if you want, I don't think I have to like mention, use the example here. If you want an example, you can just read through this actually. So read with me actually. Here you must make your under leading, right? So here I've written that you must make your understanding of terms a little tendentious. Tendentious just means leading to something, right? As in the way you would like things to be understood, right? For instance, God will end all humans regardless is the most neutral understanding of things. But to justify this act on practical grounds, you should also mention that humans have been problematic agents towards the God's world. This characterization helps you prove later that God is justified in ending human civilization. Get it? So, like a neutral understanding is that humans are. This is we are talking about all the humans and not just the bad ones. But then saying that look, humans, no matter how good they seem, they're still bad at the end of the day towards the environment, towards things that they don't have any. I mean, I might not be bad towards a particular person, but I might still be someone who doesn't care about not littering spaces, etc., which also counts as bad. So those kinds of things. Okay. Now the third component in framing that you need to keep in mind is that when I say you have to be your characterization should be leading, what is it leading the adjudicators towards, right? That's another question. How do I decide which direction I'm supposed to lead everybody else in, right? That is decided by identifying your burden, right? So what is the what how is burden determined in a debate? When I get a motion as such as this house has good and all human population now, on the government side, I have some burdens to fulfill. First of all, this is an actor motion. An actor motion is just like where you have been made a particular person or a stakeholder and you have to debate as them. So here I'm debating as God, right? Because I mean, it mentions that in the motion that this house, as in you as God, will do something. So think of yourself as God, and then what are the incentive structures of God to do something or not do something, right? What is the response going to be towards God? Now you can't say something as arbitrary as God doesn't care because God is powerful and everything. You will have, because, and God doesn't care about human opinion because, I mean, he's the creator, or like they are the creator and we are its creations, not those kinds of things, but that it's a benevolent actor, that they want to preserve earth and those kinds of like profound things, right? Now, whenever we're talking about burden, then on government side here, my burden is first to defend God because I am playing God here, right? And this is an actor motion. But secondly, I want to. There's a couple of things that I have to do in this debate in order to win, which is what your burden is. So if I'm saying this house as God would end human population, to identify my burden, I ask myself some questions. The first question is what should I do in this debate to win, right? Then you will have some intrinsic like responses, or your partner will tell you a couple of things. What is it that you're supposed to do in this particular motion? Perhaps let's just say the first thing that you're supposed to do is that there is no alternative. Prove that there is no alternative with God, right? As long as you're able to prove that God has no other alternative but to end human population, the opposition is unlikely to win the debate. Because no matter what they say, if you have been able to prove that, look, any alternative, such as that of God perhaps making the situation better or making the environment better, because why can't God do that, right? God has absolute power, God could do anything. So why not just make people's life better rather than kill them? Why not just alleviate all of this problem of global warming and some such thing? To that, if you are able to say that no, this is not possible, even though God is perfectly capable of doing all of it, they'd still avoid it because they work through reward punishment yeah, so there is a reward and punishment mech that is followed by God, and it has been so for like the people who have already died as well. God cannot now start changing the rules of the game because they have to treat everybody with equality or some such thing, or that humans have proven themselves to be unredeemable, because of which God has no alternative, because even if God was to make the society better, humans are again going to degenerate it, so no point. It's better now that human civilization is ending. If I'm able to say that there is no alternative then with God, even if God has the power to like implement those alternatives, they still do not have the ethical allowance to do it. I will take this debate because then I will be able to prove that even though this is the most gruesome thing to you at the outset, it still has to be done by God because there is no alternative. When there is no alternative, you do the one thing that you're supposed to do, right? So this is your burden in this debate from the government side. If I'm able to prove that this is absolutely mandatory and that there is no alternative, there is no way in which opposition could take this debate, insofar as I have curtailed all the possibilities from opposition by proving this. So this becomes my burden. Now my burden tells me, if my burden is that proving that there is no alternative, then what is the automatic characterization that I need to give? This burden will help me identify the direction that I'm supposed to go in, right? If I have to prove that there is no alternative, I first have to think of the alternative, right? What might the other side say? The other side will say God can make life better, this, that. Okay, I keep that in mind and I find a rebuttal to that already. So through this, and this I can integrate. Let's say if my rebuttal was that God has to be fair, then in my characterization, I pick this bit, which I have been able to come to through my burden, and put it in my characterization here of God, right? So now when I characterize God with my partner or like for the debate, I will definitely put this point of God being a fair actor in my characterization, because this helps me eventually in proving God's moral obligation, right? Or like ethical dilemmas. So this is how your characterization happens. You identify the burden, which starts with what do I have to do to win the debate? You get an answer to that. Perhaps prove that there is no alternative, right? When you get that answer, you think about the alternatives that might be given, and you think about how you can curtail those alternatives. What can you say in response to that, right? And then you use elements of those responses in your characterization. I hope that's not too confusing. I'll take questions now. Navya?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to understand that being value neutral and is very closely connected to characterization, right? Because you are going to be making your case on basis of your stakeholders. So I wanted to ask this earlier, but then I didn't. I just wanted to ask that when you're talking about particular stakeholders, they need to be chosen in a manner where the opposite where the opposition can also debate, right? That's what you meant when being value neutral.
Yeah. So just coming up with characterization which heavily favors your side but does not overlook what the other side might say. So it's like a tactical move, right? Where you are not just trying to be only preoccupied with yourself and thereby losing sight of what the side might say. That is what I mean by value neutrality.
Okay.
Yeah, Ritvik?
So while debating, there are follow-ups, right? Follow-ups to a question. Like if we ask a question to another debater, uh, are we allowed to ask 2 or more questions
No
after?
cross questioning.
No
No,
follow-up.
no follow-ups are allowed. So if you
And
want to ask another POI, you can raise a separate POI, but then you can't immediately cross-question them on the response.
okay. And also, what do we do when we are unable or unwilling to answer a certain question?
There is no obligation on you to accept a POI. Just don't accept a POI. Just say I decline to take one.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if you, I think this is explained, so I don't have to go over the example here. So this is how you do the burden and the framing. I hope this will make sense to you. I'll share the document perhaps on the group for reference later. Now on to the fourth component of feature, which is that your explanation or your characterization should be well reasoned and there should be comparisons in them. What does that mean? Now read it with me if you want. Any characterization that you give is likely to be conflicted by the other side. This is something that I've mentioned multiple times now, especially if it is leading. So if it is leading, you're trying to get the adjudicators to think about only some aspect, then it's likely the other side will be like ruffled by that. And they would want to do exactly the opposite. So be prepared for that, right? How do you like become prepared for such a conflict to not, I mean, to deal with such a conflict and then emerge victorious eventually and have your characterization be accepted regardless of the conflict? You have to then work on a comparative, which is again coming back to the point of value neutrality. It's just basically me saying that look, there are bad things about human population, but we realize that the opposition might want to talk about the good things as well. But when they want to talk about the good things, they should keep in mind that these good things aren't enough for them to be allowed to live any further because the bad outweighs the good. This is what I mean by comparison. Always like keep it in, always be mindful of what the other side might want to say as like a contradiction to what you are saying, and deal with it already, even before having even before them going ahead and mentioning that, right? This is what is like this is what preemption is about. So when you already guess what the other side might say, and even if they don't say it, just compare, right? You say that panel, we understand that there's always a good and a bad side to everything. We keep in mind the good and the bad side, both of them when we're debating, but then we have a comparison here. We think the bad overtakes like the good, or the good overtakes the bad according to whatever you want this to be leading towards, right? So that is about reasoning, and reasoning should be in a comparative form. So this is another important thing about characterization. You can't just end your characterization in one-liners, right? I see a lot of people saying that soldiers are like, I mean, if soldiers were your, let's say, stakeholders, you just end up saying that soldiers are these people who enroll for national service or some such thing. I mean, it's not enough for me to buy because it doesn't give me a clear understanding of what the life of a soldier is like or why the soldier is relevant to this debate. It doesn't give me any clarity on those dimensions, which is why your characterization can even take up to a minute or like 1.5 minutes if your speech is going to be 4 minutes long. So if generally it's a 7-minute long, the speeches are like 8 minutes long in other tournaments. That's the standard limit, the time limit that you get for a speech, in which 3 minutes even can be spent in your characterization. Sometimes characterization is that important. So don't think of it as something that is like just cursor, that is something that is a precursor. It is an integral part of your debate, which needs to be given enough time and reasoning for it to stand as a legitimate thing in the debate to be considered by adjudicators. Okay, the next and the last feature is that your entire debate has to be, just 1 second, your characterization has to be adaptive, right? Which means that if I have said something, I also have to be prepared with the idea of having to change it, because maybe this thing that I thought about would as relevant in the debate during case prep has suddenly been rebutted really well by the other side. in which case I should be okay to shed this particular component from my case because it's becoming counterproductive now. It's only harming me. So it's better to just let go of it and shed it rather than just taking the burden of carrying it along. But then to do that, your characterization has to be multidimensional, and you should know about the various dimensions that you can pursue if one of the dimension is well rebutted. Here you have to look at the example. It might not be understood without one. Look at the example here, right? Let's say I say that humans are problematic, but the reason I give for that is well rebutted in opposition, right? Let us say that this particular dimension that I gave of human beings being problematic was that they cause a lot of environmental damage, and which is why Earth is giving up, right? So so the claim here is that humans are problematic, right? That's the major claim in my characterization. I'll just highlight that for better clarity. That's the major claim. The dimensions or the reason that I find for this claim is perhaps this, that there is a lot of problem that humans create for the environment, which is why we think they're problematic. Now, maybe the opposition side was very smart and they were able to rebut it completely. That no, there's better instances where humans have actually fought for the environment, where humans have made the environment better, rather than just us saying, and that's why this entire idea of environment, where human beings being like uncaring towards the environment does not stand, right? If I think that it's been rebutted well, I don't have to cling to this argument just because I made it initially. I can automatically switch in the deputy speech perhaps to another dimension, which will prove the same thing, humans being problematic. But this could be something else. I could immediately switch to, let's say, the scientific endeavors. I could say that artificial intelligence is being given so much like impetus that it might take over humans, right? Which is not what God would want, because we can't have machines ruling over the world. Which is why it's better to end human civilization, because people are misusing science now and they're like leading us to a very degenerated world. So my major claim remains the same in characterization. My dimension can change even without the adjudicators realizing that there was some change, because I am not going ahead and explicitly saying that, look, we are no more talking about environmental degradation caused by humans because it was well rebutted. We are just not talking about it as much as we will talk about the scientific endeavors being problematic now. That's how easy the switch is, right? And the adjudicators won't even find out. But for that, you yourself have to have a lot of dimensions that you can follow, even if you have to shed some of them. Don't be sticklers where you say that, no, just because I thought of this argument during case prep, I'm going to see it through. Sometimes this does happen, right? I mean, with me also, oftentimes I feel like just running this argument because it was so good in my head when I initially thought of it. But sometimes it's better to just let go of it because it's not as effective when you say it as it was in your head. So that way you have to be okay and make peace with things not standing in the debate and thereby having to be like shed or like let go of it. Are there any questions?
No, ma'am.
Ritvik?
Sorry, Noda.
Shakti?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The first question is that, like, during our stance, are we allowed to pause to gather our thoughts?
What? During your stance, could you come again?
During our stance, are we allowed to pause so that we can have some time to gather our thoughts?
As in between your speech?
Yeah.
Not really. Your time, I mean, once the timer is started, there's no stopping it. So you
can I take like 3 seconds of the timer to just collect my thoughts so that I can speak again?
Okay. So before you begin your speech, you can get some time. You can tell the adjudicators that I need 30 seconds to gather my thought. That's doable. But stopping in between the speech is not an option.
What if I stop speaking before the 6th minute comes?
That's okay. You can wrap your speech up in before 6 minutes as well, before the stipulated time, as long as all your points are mentioned.
Like, will it affect my
no?
What? No.
You're
And
not
can we like take a quick glance at a notebook?
Yeah. You can always have notes by your side. You can also like refer to them, but you can't be reading it or the entire speech.
Okay. And can I say that the statement made by the opposition is completely nonsense?
You don't have to say it's nonsense. You can just say that we don't stand by it for so and so reasons.
Can we say it's ridiculous?
No, why do you want to use these terms, right? Because most of the times when people are saying that this is the other side is nonsense, preposterous, ridiculous, they mostly don't have a reason for it. So my recommendation is that respectfully deal with the argument that's been given to you. And if you think you're too smart, then just prove it through your argumentation without saying these words.
Okay. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Navya?
Yeah, I just wanted to understand that between two speeches, like for the second and the third speaker of both the sides, there is the argument is actually the case is actually developed from the speeches of their previous speakers. So will they be getting a break or a gap between those speeches, or it just goes one by one as one completes, the other one starts?
You can get some time in between. So, like if I am the deputy and leader of opposition has just completed their speech, I can
Right.
tell the adjudicators to just give me some time, let's say 20, 30 seconds at best, to gather my
Okay.
thoughts. That's doable. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, BV Skanda Purva.
Ma'am, yesterday you had mentioned that we'll get to know the topic in Instagram. So, which is the Instagram ID actually?
It's okay. I'll put it in the chat. I'll put it on the WhatsApp. Actually, it's on the WhatsApp group. It might be, or I'll put it again on the WhatsApp group for you to just like refer to.
Okay.
Oh, it's already in the chat. It's been put in the chat. Okay, Arena.
Yeah, so in the stakeholders, can we have stakeholders like for the particular motion we had? Can we have stakeholders like animals or plants?
You could no. I mean, those you can definitely talk about the environment,
Mm-hmm.
but that isn't your stakeholder. That's a part of your status quo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no, like mentioning like species have gone extinct over so many years. So taking that.
Species have gone. Yes, you could talk about species having gone extinct, but then you have to tell me what the impact of that on humans is, because
Okay.
eventually it's for the betterment of human civilization that you debate on any motion.
Okay. And can we present like a counter model?
You
In
can,
the
but
proposition too?
that's mostly done in a this house regrets motion.
Okay.
If you regret something, you give a counterfactual from the government side,
Okay.
but it's not mandatory in any other type of motion.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Shakti?
Yeah, just one last question. If a participant feels that the adjudicator is biased or unreasonable, like what are the possibilities that we can take?
No, the adjudicators are qualified here always. So the likelihood of the adjudicator being biased is absolutely null and void because they don't know you beforehand. But so you can't like question their verdict.
Yeah, but if they are biased or something and we have some proof, like how do we get it forward?
There is always an equity committee in any tournament, so they take these issues up. But like I said, adjudicators aren't usually biased.
And the motions for seeing his group, they said that the motions will be displayed or announced 1 hour before the conference. Does it mean that there's only one topic for all the debates?
There's separate motions for separate rounds. So there are 2 rounds, 2 motions.
Oh, and so for all the topics, we only have 1 hour for preparation.
Sorry, what?
Like for all the topics for the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, is it just different topics for 1 hour? Totally.
Yeah. Yes, there's 2 rounds only, so 2 motions.
Is it like a knockout game? Like once we lost, that's
No,
it?
it's not a knockout. You will be given the results after you have played both the rounds.
So everyone will be playing for 2 rounds. Then after the results come, we'll be moving forward to the finals, which is on IIT Madras.
Precisely.
All right. Thank you.
Pranav?
Yeah. So are we allowed to use personal pronouns, or should we like refer to ourselves or someone by like prime minister or deputy prime minister? Someone like that.
You can refer to them as like according to the speaker rules, not personal pronouns.
Okay.
Yeah. Celine?
You told like we can to win a debate we can think of all alternatives and give a talk which will completely stop them from.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No. Samyukta, meanwhile, Celine, you can fix your audio.
When is the When is the qualifier round? Is it on 21st or 24th?
It's on 21st.
Okay.
Oh, so for this question, we will just take the team announcement and the schedule once the questions are over.
Yeah. So actually, everybody can lower their hands for now. Let's just have team declaration happen because most of your questions will be answered in the process.
Can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah.
You told like the opposition we will think of alternatives to stop them from answering in a debate. Like, what if the opposition thinks of all alternatives for the debate and stops us from asking any questions? What can we do in that case?
That doesn't happen. Nobody can ever exhaust all the possibilities.
No, you told like if the opposition thinks of all alternatives we can give for the statement they gave, what can we do to like overcome that statement?
That's what I'm saying, right? The opposition, it will have to be a very, very smart team to do that. It's mostly not the case. You will still have a way out, which you can think about with your teammate. I mean, it happens with the debate. I will give you feedback on this when you are actually participating in a mock, because this will require a motion and context for me to explain better.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think, Kamal, so you can take over now for team declaration, etc.
Sure. So everyone just stay for 5 minutes. What we will do, we will look at the team's announcement and also the schedule. Just to clarify, so we will have qualifiers on 21st and 24th. 21st are for students who are outside Chennai, whether they are from Delhi, Mumbai, Coimbatore, Madurai. So they can plan ahead because you will need to plan to go to IIT Madras. For the student who are in Chennai, they have exams or any other commitment, they can do the qualifiers on 24th. With that, what I will do, I'm going to share my screen. First, we will look at the teams for the juniors, and also we will share the PDFs in the respective groups. Okay, so let's go with team by team. Do we have team 1, Shivarth, Diva, Saranya? Anyone from the team 1? Okay, no one from team 1. Team 2, do we have Devik, Harish, Natarajan?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are a team together. So please coordinate, and you are based in Chennai. So your qualifier will be on 24th from 4:30 to 8:30. Is that clear?
So 24th?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Because your school in Chennai, correct? You can
Yes,
plan
sir.
ahead and come next day. Same goes with PSBB KK Nagar, Rishi, Vardhaman.
Yeah, we're here.
Shreya, you are here?
Yeah, we're here.
Perfect. Same goes for you because you are also based out of Chennai. Then the team 4. Team 4 is a dynamic. Punya, Manasvi, Tarun. Any one of you here? Team 4. Team 1. Just give me a second. I'm just muting it. Team 1 and team 4 are not present. Okay. Then team 5, do we have BV Skando Purva? No.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that the correct pronunciation of your name?
It is actually BV Skandapurva.
Skanda Purva. Okay. That's great. Okay. So you are a team. Please plan together.
Sir?
I think that's the Queen's Mira. Your school is in Madurai, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so then this is a bit of mistake here. Your qualifiers will be on 21st.
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
Sure, because I guess you have to plan from Madurai. So that we will correct. Queen's Mira. So the team 5, team 6, team 7, all are from Queen's Mira International. They have the qualifiers on 21st. That we will.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then do we have Tanishka, Raju, Amrita,
Yes,
Arun?
sir.
Okay, so in your case, it's a dynamic team. That means you have registered 2 together. The third partner we have to find for you, that we will find and allocate. But you are also based outside. You are in Chennai, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you can play both on 24th and 24th.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So we'll tell you and correct. And if you have a third partner, that will be great. Otherwise, we'll try to find a partner for you. Then the team 9. Do we have Arnav and Priyanka Mohan?
Yeah.
Do we have Arnav here? Okay, Priyanka is here. Priyanka and Arnav, you are a pair, and we need to find a one more partner for you because your team is a dynamic pair. If you have a partner, please suggest. They need to be between 6th to 8th grade for they to be in this category. Is it clear to all the junior students? Okay, if
Yes,
that's
sir.
clear. So team 1, team 4, and team 8, team 9, and yeah, that's what we have to discuss. Team 4. Okay, with that, let's move to the senior category. Do we have in the senior category team 1 here?
Yeah. Yes, are here.
Okay, and you are from Chennai, is that correct? Or nearby to Chennai?
Yes.
So you can plan.
Yes.
So your qualifier will be on 24th. PSBB KK Nagar, Rania, Noor, Sudiksha, are you here? Team 2?
Yep, we're here.
Again, same because you are in Chennai, your qualifier will be on 24th.
Yeah, thank you.
Team 3, Rishabh, Jia, Shashank. You are also from
Yes.
Chennai.
Yes, sir.
Your qualifier will be on 24th. Then goes the team 4 and team 5 from National Public School. You are from Bangalore, is that correct? And we have both the teams, team 4 and 5.
Yes, sir.
Okay, which team you are in? Is it team 4 or
team
team 5? Okay, I guess, and you know team 4 is also from your school, likely from your debating society. So your qualifier will be 21st. Then goes to team 6. Team 6, you are based in Chennai, that's correct?
Yes.
Okay, your qualifier will be 24th. Please have your team check. Team 7, again Chennai, 24th.
Yes.
Team 8. Team 8, are you here?
Yeah.
Shakti, Shura, Abhimanyu, Kumar, Sharma. Perfect. So your match will be on 24th. Pranav, Samyukta,
Yeah.
24th. Perfect. Pranav, Gurjpal, Satvi, you are
Yes. Yes.
Yes, sir.
That's why your qualifier will be 21st of December. Then goes Samarth, Sahas, and Advik. Do we have Samarth, Sahas, and Advik? No, no one. Okay. It's a dynamic team. They need to coordinate. Do we have anyone from team 12? Amrita, Prasha, Navya?
Yeah, I'm here.
Could you name yourself?
Navya.
Okay, Navya. So you are paired with Amrita and Prisha. Please coordinate with them.
Yeah.
Okay, and you are based out of, you are outside Chennai. That's why your qualifier will be on 21st of December.
Okay.
We have then Nandana go. So we will coordinate with them. They were part of the state Tamil Nadu team. Evangeline, Shashan, Shakti, Kavya, Ishan, Surve. Do we have anyone from the team 14?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 2 students are from same school, Queen Mira International, and one Ishan is from Dhirubhai Ambani school. If I'm correct, both of you are outside Chennai. Queen Mira is from Madurai, and
Yes.
Dhirubhai Ambani is from Mumbai. That means you have
Yes.
to plan ahead. So your qualifier will be on 21st. Also, what I suggest that because I guess you will be interacting for the first time just after this call or even in the call, do interact, share your number so you can plan ahead and work together. Is it clear to both the three of you?
Yes, sir.
Perfect.
Yes.
Then team 15, Harshada, Vivek, Tishya, is the same condition with you. Could you go ahead and work together? Do we have how many of members from team 14, 15 are here?
Harshit is here.
Sorry, let's go one by one. Is Harshida here?
Harshit Mitran is here.
Okay, perfect. Vivek?
Yes, Vivek is here.
Okay, Tishya? Okay, Tessia is not here, so you have to coordinate with Tessia. That's your dynamic team. And again, 21st, because you are outside Chennai. Then second last team, we have Gunmandi, Arena, Faraz, Farishta, Arya,
Yeah,
Hamle.
we're here. We're here. The NASA school team is here.
Perfect. So Nisar is in Hyderabad, Heritage is in Gurgaon, again outside Chennai. So you have to work together as a team because it's a 3-member team, and do talk to your team partner and work for your qualifiers. Then let's move to the team 17. Do we have Anuj Bajaj, Neve, Dakshesh?
Sir.
Okay, so we have Dakshesh. Dakshesh, you have to coordinate with Anuj and Neve and your members. Zion, your school is in Chennai, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So currently you're paired with students which are outside Chennai, so you have to do the qualifier on 21st. Then team 18. Do we have Netra, Stuti, and Manishka?
I'm here.
Who is this? Is this Netra?
Yeah.
And do we have Stuti?
She's not in the meeting. I don't know where she is.
No worries. Then do we have Manishka? Okay, Manishka's are not there. So team 18, you have to coordinate because your qualifiers will be on 21st, as your team is based out of Bangalore, even with their Shilp Academy is based out of Bangalore.
So we only get our motion 1 hour in advance.
Yes. So is the team, I'm just coming to that. Is it this clear to everyone? What's their team? And the day of the tournament for them, the qualifiers.
I have a doubt. On 21st of December, at what time will it be held?
So it's going to be between 4:30 to 8:30 evening, post school hours.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. I hope that's clear. Now let's come to the schedule and everything. So on 21st, and the same going to go for the 24th, is that you will have 2 matches, round 1, round 2, and both going to be WSDC, exactly same format. And you will get the motions 1 day prior. Correct, for 1 match, and for 1 match you will get 1 hour prior. Is this clear?
So this for only for juniors or for both seniors and juniors?
It's for both junior and senior. So one called as prepared motion, one is called as impromptu. So do look out for your space in the group tomorrow. Anyway, all the announcement related to the motion will happen tomorrow. No. Just a second. So there is a question. Is there any other sources where the topic is available? Currently we have not announced topic for anyone. Okay, that's the first thing. So don't worry. We will announce the topic when we announce for everyone on the group together. Let's go one by. Tanishka, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my team has only 2 people. So when is
Okay, Tanishka. Okay, just let me check. Tanishka. Yes, Tanishka, currently your team has only 2 members. That's true.
So as our date is 21st and there are only 2 days, when's the fastest we can get a new member?
Okay, we will work out. So either if you have a partner, you can suggest, or we will look out for your partner after this call.
We currently don't have any suggested partners, so.
Okay, noted. So we will work out that way. Anyway, so your
thank you.
Motion. Okay. If that question is clear, then Tanishka. Okay, then Navya Seth.
Yeah, I wanted to understand that how many participants would be selected for the qualifying round, for the final, sorry, from the qualifying round.
So we will have 24 students from each category, junior and senior.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Sarvesh, Dev,
Yeah, Tharish Dave. Just one doubt. Belonging to the senior category, the motions will be released 1 hour prior, right?
So no. So both. So what you will have. So in WSDC there are two motions. One is prepared and impromptu. Prepared will be released 1 day prior, and impromptu will be released 1 hour prior. So I guess likely this is Monday 7:20. So first we will circulate the teams within your group, and then we'll share the schedule with you, which will have when you will receive the motion, at what time, how much you have prepared time for each and every round.
Okay, thank you.
What is the schedule for Chennai-based debaters? The only difference between Chennai and outside Chennai is the date. Otherwise, everything will remain as it is. Obviously, the motion will change because you will have more time. Otherwise, the motion will change for 24 because otherwise what is the motion. But other than that, the schedule will remain the same. And for 21st, we will publish the schedule, by tomorrow morning. But do block your 4:30 to 8:30. If your match is on 21st, if your match is 24th, then book your 4:30 to 8:30. Harish Natarajan, please go ahead.
Yeah, so will we be getting our sides when the motions are announced?
Yes, that's true. You will get the sites. Yes.
Thank you.
Deepika Sharwani.
Yeah. So day after tomorrow, we are having like a rehearsal or something, or like it's selection.
Can you repeat your question?
For day after tomorrow, like we have debate, right? Rehearsal.
That's true. Yes. 21st, you will have the debate.
Is it like a selection or a debate?
It's a debate. It's a WSDC debate.
So the people will be selected in it and they will only be taken to Madras.
Yes. We will tell which student are going to Madras. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, noted. Netra Prakash, please go ahead.
Sorry, did you mention the timing of the 21st debate?
Oh, it's 4:30 to 8:30?
4:30.
Yeah, 4:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
And we get our motion at 3:30.
You will get the schedule by tomorrow morning, which will have all the when you get the motion and how much preparation time will you have and when the match over. If that's clear, then we will stop the recording for today.